My parents said they couldn't afford to take me on vacation. Then I saw my sister's kids in first. I'm Luann, 29 years old, sitting alone in my rain-splattered apartment on yet another solitary Sunday. Growing up, I believed family meant equal love and support. Last month, when I asked to join our family vacation to Hawaii, my parents claimed they couldn't afford another ticket. Then at the airport, I saw my sister's twins skipping through first-class boarding. I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. But I didn't confront them then and there. I stayed silent, gathered evidence, and waited. A week later, their Hawaiian vacation smiles disappeared completely. Where are you watching from? Hit subscribe to hear how my silent revenge exposed years of family deception. My story begins in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up in what appeared to be a typical middle-class family. My parents, Diana and William Jackson, both worked as high school teachers at the local public school. My older sister, Amanda, now 35, always seemed to be the sun around which our family orbited. Then there was my younger brother, Nate, 25, who still lives at home with my parents, rent-free while working part-time at the local grocery store. Looking back, I can see the signs of favoritism were present from early childhood, though as a kid I tried desperately to explain them away. Amanda always received brand new clothes at the beginning of each school year, complete with shopping trips and lunch out with mom. I received her hand-me-downs carefully washed and folded, presented with, "These still have plenty of wear in them, and you're so practical, Luann." When Amanda had dance recitals, both parents would attend without fail, often bringing flowers and taking the family out for celebration dinners afterward. When I had academic competitions or science fairs, I usually found myself asking for rides from friends' parents or taking the bus alone. If I brought home trophies or certificates, they would end up displayed on the refrigerator for a few days before disappearing into a storage box, while Amanda's participation ribbons from dance remained framed in the hallway for years. Family photos told the same story. Amanda featured prominently in nearly every shot, usually center frame, with mom and dad beaming beside her. I could typically be found at the edge, half smiling, sometimes partially cut off. Nate and I joked privately that at least we were in the same boat, but even he received more attention as the baby of the family. The contrast between our 16th birthdays remains particularly vivid in my memory. Amanda's Sweet 16 was an elaborate affair, with nearly 100 guests, a professional DJ catered food, and a brand new used car waiting in the driveway with a giant red bow. My parents spent months planning it, talking about nothing else for weeks before and after. When my 16th birthday rolled around 2 years later, I received a small family dinner at home and a practical gift card to buy new clothes for school. When I couldn't hide my disappointment, my mother patted my hand and said, "Amanda needs more encouragement to feel confident. You're naturally good at everything you do. Be grateful for your gifts." That became the familiar refrain throughout my childhood. My academic excellence and responsible nature were taken for granted, expected rather than celebrated. I learned to stop asking for recognition to hide my disappointment and to become fiercely self-reliant. If I wanted something, I would work for it myself. The one person who saw through the family dynamic was my grandmother Elaine, my father's mother. She lived across town in a modest bungalow and often invited me over when things became too tense at home. She would bake cinnamon rolls and listen as I recounted the latest example of being overlooked. "They don't see what they're doing, sweet girl," she would say, her weathered hands cupping mine. "But someday they might have to face it. Keep your receipts." I didn't understand what she meant by keep receipts until much later. But Grandmother Elaine always gave me equal gifts compared to my siblings, made a point of attending my events, and treated me with the love and recognition I craved from my parents. One Christmas stands out painfully in my memory. I was 14, and Amanda, then 20, received a beautiful gold necklace with a diamond pendant designer boot she'd been hinting about for months, and a weekend trip to Chicago to see a Broadway show with mom. I received practical items, a planner for school-sensible snow boots, and a gift card to the bookstore. "Because you're so sensible with your choices, Luann." When I opened my gifts from Grandmother Elaine, however, I found a delicate silver bracelet with my birthstone and a handwritten note that said, "For my brilliant granddaughter, who shines even when others don't see it." I wore that bracelet every day until the clasp finally broke from use, and even then I kept it safely in my jewelry box as a reminder that someone saw me. Those early years shaped my personality in ways both positive and negative. I became extremely independent, academically driven, and responsible with money. But I also developed a deep-seated belief that I would always come second in the eyes of those who should love me equally. I built walls around my heart and learned to expect disappointment from those closest to me. Little did I know that these childhood patterns would only intensify as we reached adulthood, setting the stage for an even more painful betrayal years later. The financial disparities in our family became glaringly obvious during my college years. While I worked multiple jobs to put myself through state university, my parents' support remained minimal despite earlier promises to help with tuition. During my freshman year, Amanda dropped out of community college after meeting Paul, a successful real estate developer 10 years her senior. When she announced their engagement after just 6 months of dating, my parents initially expressed disappointment about her abandoning her education. However, their tune quickly changed when they realized she was, in their words, marrying well. Paul has such a bright future, my mother gushed during a family dinner shortly after the engagement. He's already purchased that beautiful house in Lakewood Hills, and he's talking about opening offices in Cincinnati next year. I sat quietly pushing food around my plate as they discussed wedding plans. What started as concerns about a rushed marriage transformed into enthusiastic planning for an elaborate ceremony that would inevitably require significant financial contribution from my parents. That same week, I had scheduled a meeting with my university financial aid advisor because I was struggling to balance my course load with the 30 hours I was working weekly at the campus bookstore and waiting tables at a local diner. "Mom, Dad," I said tentatively the night before my appointment, "I wanted to remind you about that financial aid meeting tomorrow. They said it would be helpful if you could attend to discuss the family contribution portion of my loans." My father glanced up from his newspaper. "Oh, honey, we can't make it tomorrow. We're meeting with Amanda and Paul to look at potential reception venues." "But this is about my tuition," I pressed. "We talked about this months ago." My mother sighed, setting down her coffee mug. "Luann, we need to prioritize right now. Amanda's wedding is in 4 months and venues book up quickly. Besides, you've always been so good at handling these things yourself." That night, through the thin walls of our home, I could hear them discussing how they might tap into their retirement savings early to cover the cost of Amanda's wedding dress, which apparently cost more than my entire semester's tuition. The pattern continued throughout my college years. While I accumulated student loan debt and worked until exhaustion, my parents poured resources into Amanda's new life with Paul. When I graduated with honors in accounting, they missed the ceremony entirely because it conflicted with Amanda's housewarming party for her new 5-bedroom house in the exclusive part of town. "We'll celebrate when we get back," my mother promised over the phone that morning. "Amanda needs our help setting up before all those important people from Paul's firm arrive." I sat alone during the graduation ceremony, watching other families cheer and take photos. My roommate Zoe's parents brought me flowers and insisted I join their celebration dinner. "They've done this your whole life, haven't they?" Zoe asked gently as we drove to the restaurant. I nodded, fighting back tears. "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be," she replied, squeezing my hand. The most painful financial disparity came during my junior year, when I needed emergency dental surgery for an impacted wisdom tooth that had become infected. The procedure cost $2,000 that insurance wouldn't cover, and I simply didn't have the money. In physical pain and desperate, I called my parents. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency," I explained, holding a cold compress against my swollen jaw. "I can pay you back over the summer when I pick up more shifts." "Oh, sweetie," my mother sighed. "That's just not possible right now. We've just loaned Amanda and Paul $12,000 for a down payment on their new SUV. They needed something safer with the possibility of children in their future." I ended up taking out a high-interest emergency loan that took me nearly 2 years to repay. Meanwhile, Amanda drove her luxury vehicle to family gatherings, complaining about the limited cargo space. Throughout these challenging years, my grandmother Elaine remained my steadfast supporter. She couldn't contribute much financially living on a fixed income herself, but she slipped me small amounts when she could, and more importantly, provided the emotional support my parents withheld. "Your time will come, Luann," she would tell me during our weekly phone calls. "Focus on building your own life on your terms. Success is the best response." I took her advice to heart, graduating at the top of my class despite all the obstacles. I secured a promising entry-level position at a marketing firm in Chicago, 6 hours from Columbus, a distance that provided both physical and emotional breathing room for my family. The distance would prove to be both a blessing and a curse in the years that followed. After college, I threw myself into building my career and financial stability in Chicago. My entry-level position at Marshall Marketing gradually evolved into a role as a digital marketing specialist, then team leader. I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates, bringing lunch from home, and meticulously paying down my student loans. Meanwhile, back in Ohio, Amanda's life with Paul continued to flourish financially. They purchased a vacation home on Lake Erie, joined an exclusive country club, and traveled internationally several times a year. My parents spoke of Amanda's lifestyle with undisguised pride, as though her marriage into wealth somehow reflected their own success. The family dynamic shifted again when Amanda gave birth to twins Taylor and Logan 3 years ago. If Amanda had been the center of attention before the arrival of the twins, created an entirely new gravitational force in the family, despite being retired on a fixed income, as they frequently reminded me when I needed help. My parents became essentially full-time support staff for Amanda's family. They babysit 3 days a week, purchased a new car, specifically because it has better car seat anchors for the twins, and even began talking about selling their house to move closer to Amanda's neighborhood. During one phone call, my mother casually mentioned, "We're helping Amanda and Paul with the twins' preschool tuition. Can you believe it's $4,000 a month for Montessori? But they need the best start in life." I bit back the obvious question about my student loans, which I was still paying off without assistance. Holiday gatherings became increasingly centered around Amanda's family as well. Celebrations were always scheduled around her convenience, held at her spacious home, and dominated by the twins' needs and activities. Gift-giving became almost comical in its imbalance. The twins received mountains of expensive presents. Amanda and Paul exchanged lavish gifts with my parents, while I typically received a gift card or practical item like kitchen towels or a planner. Family conversations revolved almost exclusively around the twins' activities, Paul's business ventures, and Amanda's social circle. If I attempted to share news about a promotion or project, I would be given a brief, "That's nice, dear," before the topic swiftly returned to the twins' latest achievements. When I received a significant promotion to marketing director last year, I planned a small celebration dinner in Columbus during a weekend visit. I invited my parents' grandmother, brother, and Amanda's family, making reservations at a nice restaurant and taking time off work to drive down. The morning of the dinner, my mother called. "We have to cancel tonight, Luann. Amanda just called and their babysitter canceled last minute. They have an important charity gala, so we need to take the twins. You understand, right? We can get together for lunch tomorrow instead." I sat in my hotel room staring at the wall. The dinner was to celebrate my promotion, Mom. I drove 6 hours for this. "And we're very proud of you," she replied, distraction evident in her voice. "But Amanda really needs us right now. Taylor is going through a clingy phase. We'll make it up to you tomorrow." The next day's lunch was predictably rushed, with my parents checking their phones constantly for texts from Amanda and leaving early to pick up the twins from their other grandparents. My promotion received approximately 2 minutes of conversation before the topic shifted to the twins' upcoming birthday party. At work, I formed a close friendship with my colleague Jasmine, who quickly noticed the pattern in my family relationships. After listening to me recount yet another disappointing interaction following a holiday visit, she asked, "Have you ever directly confronted them about the favoritism I had once during a rare moment alone with my parents, when I was helping them set up their new television and sound system? While showing them how to use their new streaming services, I discovered they had been sending Amanda $300 monthly through Venmo, with the description, 'childcare support.' I couldn't help but notice you're sending Amanda money every month," I said carefully. "I'm still paying off my student loans. Would you consider helping me with those instead of sending money to Amanda and Paul? They make at least 5 times what I do." My father's face hardened. "That's different, Luann. They have children to support." "Children they chose to have. I pointed out, while they both drive luxury cars and just renovated their kitchen. My mother joined in, voice tight with disapproval. This isn't like you being jealous of your sister. Amanda has different needs. When you have a family of your own, we'll support you too. So my education wasn't worth supporting, but their lifestyle is. That's enough, my father said firmly. You've always been independent and capable. Be grateful for those qualities instead of comparing yourself to your sister. The conversation shut down completely, and I drove back to Chicago feeling worse than before. The message was clear. Amanda's choices warranted unlimited support, while my achievements and needs were secondary. Around this time, my grandmother Elaine's health began to decline. At 84, she had remained relatively independent, but a minor stroke left her needing more assistance. During my weekend visits, she began asking me to help organize her finances, showing unusual concern about her accounts and investments. I want you to understand where everything is, Luann, she said one afternoon, showing me her filing system, just in case anything happens to me. I didn't realize then how important this knowledge would become, or how it would ultimately expose the full extent of my family's deception. By spring of this year, I was experiencing serious burnout after completing a major rebranding campaign for our largest client. 14-hour days, weekend work, and constant pressure had left me physically and emotionally exhausted. During a routine checkup, my doctor expressed concern about my elevated blood pressure and stress levels. You need a break, Luann, she said firmly, writing notes in my chart. I'm seriously recommending you take at least a week off. Completely disconnect from work. When was your last vacation? I couldn't remember. Between building my career, paying down debt, and making brief obligatory family visits, I hadn't taken actual leisure time in years. During my weekly call with grandmother Elaine, I mentioned the doctor's advice. Your parents and Amanda are planning that big trip to Hawaii next month, she suggested. Why don't you join them? Some son and family time might be just what you need. The idea hadn't occurred to me. Family vacations had always been an Amanda-centered affair, but perhaps this could be an opportunity to reconnect and establish a more adult relationship with my parents. I approached the conversation carefully, calling my parents on a Sunday evening when I knew they'd be home relaxing. I've been working too hard and my doctor is concerned, I explained after exchanging pleasantries. I heard from grandmother that you're planning a Hawaii trip next month. I was wondering if I could join you. I'd pay for my own accommodations, of course. I just need some time away, and it would be nice to spend time together as a family. The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes before they even responded. Oh, Luann, my mother finally said, her voice strained with forced sympathy. That's probably not the best idea. My father cleared his throat in the background. We could barely afford our own tickets, honey. It's taken us a year to save up. I understand, I said quickly. I'm not asking you to pay for me. I'd cover all my own expenses. I just thought it would be nice to be included in the planning, maybe share a rental car, or some activities to make it more affordable for everyone. My parents went quiet again, and I could picture them having one of their silent conversations across the living room, communicating with meaningful glances like they'd done throughout my childhood. The thing is, my mother continued delicately, this trip is really centered around the twins. It's their first big vacation, and Amanda and Paul need our help managing them on the flights and excursions. I could help with the twins too, I offered, though the thought of spending my vacation as an unpaid babysitter wasn't exactly appealing. My father sighed. Luann, as a single person, you probably wouldn't enjoy a family-focused vacation anyway. There won't be much adult time with the twins' schedule. Why don't you find a nice spa weekend somewhere closer to Chicago that seems more suited to your needs? The dismissal stung more than it should have. At 29, I was still being relegated to the kids' table, metaphorically speaking. My doctor specifically mentioned concerns about my mental health. I tried one more time. I've been under a lot of pressure at work and I thought family time might help. Work stress happens to everyone, my mother dismissed. Remember when your father had that difficult class of seniors 3 years ago? He managed without taking expensive vacations. Maybe try some yoga. Amanda says it works wonders for her. After hanging up, I sat in my darkened apartment fighting back tears of frustration. Out of curiosity, I checked my parents' Facebook page, something I rarely did these days. There I found numerous posts about the upcoming dream vacation to paradise, with photos of travel guides' new swimsuits they'd purchased, and excited comments about the luxury resort they'd booked. When I called grandmother Elaine to update her on the conversation, her normally gentle voice turned sharp with anger. "That's absolutely ridiculous," she said firmly. "They're treating you like an afterthought again." "It's fine," I replied automatically. "I'm used to it." "Well, you shouldn't be," she snapped. "Maybe it's time you took your own vacation, Luann. Do something for yourself for once." Taking her advice, I booked a modestly priced week at a beachfront hotel in Miami. The timing coincidentally overlapped with my family's Hawaii trip, giving me a perfect excuse to decline the obligatory request to watch their house and water the plants. My brother Nate texted me the night before my departure. "Just heard Mom and Dad paid for Amanda's entire family, first-class flights and everything. Thought you should know. They've been planning it for months." I stared at the message, a strange numbness spreading through me. So it wasn't about money after all, it never had been. As I packed my suitcase for Miami, I imagined my family gathered in Hawaii without me. The twins building sandcastles with my parents' devoted assistants. Amanda lounging by the pool accepting their service as her due. My parents smiling and content with their chosen favorite, and her perfect family, never once thinking about their other daughter alone in Chicago. The familiar pain threatened to overwhelm me, but something else rose alongside it. A quiet determination took root. Perhaps it was time to stop accepting the unacceptable. Perhaps it was time for the truth to come to light. I didn't yet know what form that would take, but as I zipped my suitcase closed, I made a promise to myself that things would change. One way or another, the illusion of our happy family was about to crack. I arrived at Chicago O'Hare 3 hours early for my flight to Miami, partly from habitual punctuality and partly from anxiety about my first solo vacation. After checking my sensibly sized carry-on bag and receiving my economy class boarding pass, I headed toward the security checkpoint. Deciding I deserved a small pre-vacation indulgence, I stopped at a coffee shop for an overpriced latte, mentally calculating how it fit into my carefully planned vacation budget. As I waited for my order, I scrolled through work emails, setting up my out-of-office message, and making final notes for my team. Coffee in hand, I turned toward security when a burst of childish laughter caught my attention. The sound was painfully familiar, the distinctive giggle of my nephew Logan, mixed with his sister Taylor's excited chatter. Instinctively, I stepped behind a decorative column, nearly spilling my coffee in the process. From my hiding spot, I had a clear view of the first-class check-in area across the terminal. There stood my entire family surrounded by expensive matching luggage. Taylor and Logan ran circles around the priority boarding lane, dressed in identical designer Hawaiian outfits, complete with tiny straw hats. My sister Amanda directed a harried airline employee regarding their seating arrangements, while her husband Paul stood slightly apart, engaged in a business call. But what froze me in place were my parents. Mom and Dad stood together, Dad handling the boarding passes, while Mom adjusted her new sun hat, the price tag from an expensive boutique still visible. They looked excited, relaxed, and completely different from the people who had told me they could barely afford their own tickets just 2 weeks earlier. As I watched, unable to move, I overheard fragments of their conversation carried across the terminal. "The upgrade to first class was worth every penny," my father said, patting my mother's hand. 14 hours of travel with the twins will be much easier with the extra space." My mother nodded in agreement. Amanda was right about booking through her travel agent friend, and it's so sweet of the twins to be excited about their first time flying first class. Paul finished his call and rejoined the group. "Just got off with the resort. They've confirmed the oceanfront villas and the private cabana rental for the week. The in-laws covering the upgrade really made this special." My stomach lurched. In-laws covering the upgrade. They weren't just attending the same vacation they'd excluded me from. They were paying for luxury accommodations they'd claimed they couldn't afford. I ducked into the nearest restroom as the full reality hit me. Locking myself in a stall, I leaned against the door as my entire body began to shake. Years of dismissals, explanations, and outright lies crashed over me in waves. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a single act of favoritism. This was a deliberate pattern that had shaped my entire life. A sob escaped me, echoing in the tiled restroom. I pressed my hand against my mouth, trying to stifle the sound, but the dam had broken. Years of carefully maintained composure collapsed as I slid down to sit on the floor, heedless of my clean travel clothes against the airport bathroom tiles. "Are you okay in there?" A gentle voice called from outside the stall. "Do you need help?" I couldn't answer through my tears. After a moment, a tissue appeared under the door. "Whatever it is, I promise it won't feel this bad forever," the stranger said kindly. Deep breaths. Those simple words from a stranger unlocked something in me. I'd spent my entire life taking deep breaths, pushing down my hurt, making excuses for people who consistently chose someone else over me. I was tired of understanding, tired of accepting, tired of pretending it didn't matter. After washing my face and thanking the kind stranger, I stood in front of the mirror, studying my reddened eyes and flushed cheeks. My first instinct was to march back into the terminal and confront my family there and then, to demand answers in the middle of the airport about years of lies and favoritism. But something stopped me. A confrontation now would only lead to more excuses, more dismissals of my feelings as jealousy or sensitivity. They would close ranks as they always did, and nothing would change. No, this required a different approach. I needed irrefutable evidence and a plan. I texted Jasmine. "Just saw my family boarding first class to Hawaii after telling me they couldn't afford for me to join. Don't know whether to scream or cry." Her response was immediate. "Neither. Document everything. Take photos if you can safely. This is a pattern, not an incident. Gather your evidence, then decide your next move." As I boarded my own flight to Miami in basic economy, squeezed between two strangers, I realized Jasmine was right. This wasn't about one vacation or one lie. This was about a lifetime of being treated as less than of having my needs dismissed, while my sister received endless support and resources. Instead of dwelling on my hurt during the flight, I began crafting a plan. I opened my notes app and started documenting every instance I could remember when financial support had been unequally distributed in our family. Holidays, education, emergency needs, gifts. The list grew longer with each passing mile. By the time we landed in Miami, my sadness had transformed into resolve. This vacation would serve a purpose beyond rest and recuperation. It would be the foundation for finally addressing the dysfunction in my family. As luck would have it, my law school friend Teresa was vacationing at the same resort with her husband. When I texted her about meeting for drinks, I mentioned my family situation in broad strokes. "I might need some legal perspective on family financial matters," I wrote, "if you're willing to discuss it informally." We met at the beachside bar that evening, the Miami sunset creating a deceptively peaceful backdrop for our conversation. After catching up briefly, I explained what I'd witnessed at the airport and the years of financial disparity leading up to it. Teresa listened intently occasionally, asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she took a thoughtful sip of her cocktail before responding. "From what you're describing, there are two separate issues here," she said carefully. "The emotional aspect of favoritism, which is painful but not legally actionable, and the financial aspect, which might be concerning depending on the source of funds." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You mentioned your grandmother has been showing you her finances recently. Has she ever expressed concerns about how her money is being managed? Or about your parents having access to her accounts?" The question hit me with unexpected force. Grandmother Elaine's unusual insistence on showing me her financial records suddenly took on new significance. "She's been very focused on making sure I understand her finances," I admitted. "I thought it was just because of her health scare." Teresa nodded slowly. "It might be worth looking more carefully at those records. Elder financial abuse is unfortunately common even within families. Your grandmother may be trying to tell you something without directly accusing her son." The possibility had never occurred to me, but it made disturbing sense. My grandmother's cryptic advice to keep receipts and her anger about my exclusion from family events took on new meaning. "What should I be looking for?" I asked. "Unusual withdrawals, names added to accounts, changes to financial documents, or wills, unexplained transfers." Teresa listed, "especially if they coincide with major purchases by your parents or gifts to your sister's family." That night in my hotel room, I pulled out the photos I'd taken of grandmother Elaine's financial documents during our organizing sessions. What I'd previously viewed as helping an elderly relative with paperwork now became an investigation, and what I found left me cold. My parents' names had been added as signatories to several of my grandmother's accounts approximately 5 years ago, around the time of her minor stroke. Since then, there had been regular withdrawals that didn't align with her living expenses. Many coincided exactly with major gifts to Amanda's family, including the twins' preschool tuition payments. Most disturbing was a mortgage refinancing document for my grandmother's home, with a signature that didn't quite match her distinctive handwriting. The substantial cash-out amount had been withdrawn just 2 weeks before my parents announced they were helping Amanda and Paul with the down payment on their vacation home. My vacation had just taken a turn I never expected. What had begun as personal hurt over a family trip was evolving into something far more serious. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about protecting my grandmother from potential financial exploitation. With Teresa's guidance, I began gathering and organizing evidence, creating a timeline of withdrawals matched with family expenditures. I was no longer just a wounded daughter seeking validation. I was becoming an advocate for someone who might not be able to protect herself. The beach vacation I'd planned became a background activity to my primary mission of documentation and consultation. Between sunshine and swimming, I made discreet calls to financial experts and researched elder financial abuse laws in Ohio. Midweek, I received a text from my brother Nate. "How's Miami parents keep posting Hawaii pics? Looks expensive." I called him immediately. "Nate, I need to ask you something important. Have you noticed anything strange about grandmother Elaine's finances or mom and dad's spending lately?" His long pause told me everything before he even spoke. "I wondered if you'd ever figure it out," he finally said, voice low. "They swore me to secrecy, said it was just reallocating family resources, and that grandmother had too much money sitting unused." "They told you about taking money from grandmother?" I asked, stunned by his admission. "Not directly," he admitted, "but I overheard them talking about it last year. When I confronted them, they justified it by saying Amanda needed it more with the twins, and that grandmother would want to help her great-grandchildren. They promised to pay it back someday." "And you kept quiet?" I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. "They're letting me live at home rent-free," he said defensively. "I can't afford my own place on what I make. I didn't know what else to do." The pieces were falling into place rapidly now. My brother's complicity, my parents' increasing boldness, the systematic redirection of my grandmother's resources to fuel Amanda's lifestyle while I struggled and scrimped. That evening, I checked my family's social media accounts, something I'd been avoiding for my own mental health. The Hawaii photos were exactly as expected: beachfront villa views, private cabanas by infinity pools, shopping bags from luxury retailers, and magical family memories being created without me. One photo particularly struck me: my parents with the twins in a submarine tour, something they had specifically said was too expensive when I'd mentioned wanting to do it during a childhood trip to Florida. The caption read, "Nothing but the best for our precious grandchildren, making memories worth every penny of whose money I wondered darkly." With methodical precision, I created a spreadsheet documenting the pattern of withdrawals from my grandmother's accounts and matching family expenditures. The totals were staggering. Over 5 years, nearly $200,000 had been diverted from my grandmother's retirement savings. With Teresa's guidance, I called my grandmother's financial advisor first, confirming I was authorized on her accounts, as she had arranged during our financial organizing sessions. Mrs. Elaine Jackson asked me to review her statements for the past 5 years. I explained professionally, "I'm concerned about some withdrawal patterns I'm seeing." The advisor's hesitation was palpable, even over the phone. "I've had some concerns myself," he admitted, "but your father assured me all withdrawals were at Mrs. Jackson's request and for her benefit. As her son, he has legal authority on the accounts." "And did you verify these requests directly with my grandmother?" I asked. Another telling pause. "Not in every instance. I'd like to request a fraud investigation," I said firmly, "and immediate protections put on all remaining accounts." By the final day of my Miami trip, I had secured my grandmother's remaining assets. With new protections and authorization requirements, compiled extensive documentation of the apparent misappropriation of funds, and prepared a formal report with Teresa's assistance. The vacation that was supposed to heal my burnout had instead ignited a fire of determination. As I packed to return to Chicago, I realized I wasn't just advocating for myself anymore. I was standing up for my grandmother, and in a way, for every time in my life when I'd been treated as less deserving than my sister. The confrontation that awaited would not be easy, but I was finally ready to break the cycle of inequality that had defined my family relationships for decades. My parents might have been smiling in their Hawaiian paradise photos now, but I suspected those smiles wouldn't last much longer. My flight back to Chicago landed the same day my family returned from Hawaii. I had arranged everything meticulously with grandmother Elaine, who had insisted on being present for what she called the Day of Reckoning. "I've been waiting years for someone to finally stand up to them," she told me during our planning call. "I just didn't have the heart to do it myself. William is still my son despite everything." We set up the meeting at grandmother's house under the pretense of a welcome home dinner. She had arranged for her longtime friend and neighbor Martha to help prepare food, giving the gathering a veneer of normalcy. Meanwhile, I arrived early to set up my laptop and organize the documentation we would need. "Are you nervous?" grandmother asked, watching me arrange papers on her dining room table. "Terrified," I admitted. "But I keep thinking about all the times I stayed quiet, made excuses for them, tried to convince myself it was normal." She patted my hand. "Sometimes love means holding people accountable, Luann. They may not thank you today, but this has gone too far." The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. I took a deep breath and moved to the kitchen as grandmother welcomed the family. From my position, I could hear the excited chatter as they entered. "The resort was absolutely magical," my mother was saying. "The twins had private swimming lessons with an Olympic trainer. Can you believe it?" "We have so many pictures to show you," Amanda added. "Paul hired a professional photographer for one day to capture family memories on the beach." I stepped into the dining room as they were settling in my parents, and Amanda displaying deep tans and designer resort wear. The twins bounced around the room showing off new toys that were apparently souvenirs from the trip. "Luann," my mother exclaimed, seeming genuinely surprised. "We didn't know you'd be here. How was your little trip to Miami?" The dismissive tone in her voice steeled my resolve. No one had asked about my trip. No one had even acknowledged I'd been away. "It was enlightening," I replied calmly. "I did a lot of thinking and research. Research on vacation." Amanda laughed. "That sounds like you. Always working." Dinner proceeded with excruciating normality. My family dominated the conversation with tales of Hawaii, never once directing a question to me or grandmother, beyond perfunctory inquiries about passing dishes. The twins interrupted constantly with demands for attention, which my parents indulged immediately. As dessert was being served, I caught grandmother's subtle nod. It was time. "I'm curious about something." I began, keeping my voice steady. "How much does a first-class ticket to Hawaii cost these days?" A momentary silence fell over the table. My mother recovered first, laughing nervously. "Oh, we wouldn't know. We flew economy, of course." "That's interesting," I said, pulling out my phone, "because I have a photo that suggests otherwise." I placed my phone on the table, displaying the picture I'd managed to take discreetly at the airport, showing my family in the first-class check-in area. "You were at the airport?" Amanda asked, confusion evident in her tone. "I was flying to Miami the same day you left for Hawaii," I explained, "after being told you couldn't afford for me to join your trip." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Luann, this isn't appropriate dinner conversation." "I think it's exactly the right time to discuss this," grandmother interjected firmly. "Go ahead, Luann." Drawing strength from her support, I continued. "I've been putting together some interesting financial information. For instance, the approximately $15,000 it cost for 5 first-class tickets to Hawaii, or the $8,000 for the oceanfront villa with private cabana that Paul mentioned at the airport." My parents exchanged alarmed glances, while Amanda looked increasingly confused. "You've been tracking our spending?" my mother asked, indignation rising in her voice. "That's invasive and inappropriate." Not tracking your spending, I clarified. Tracking the source of your funds, specifically the withdrawals from grandmother's accounts that coincide perfectly with your generous gifts to Amanda's family over the past 5 years. The room went completely still. Even the twins seemed to sense the tension, stopping their play to stare at the adults. "What is she talking about?" Amanda asked, turning to our parents. I opened my laptop and turned it to face the table. "I've prepared a detailed spreadsheet showing the correlation between withdrawals from grandmother Elaine's accounts and major expenses for Amanda's family. $200,000 over 5 years, including this Hawaii vacation." "That's ridiculous," my father blustered. "Mother asked us to help manage her finances after her stroke. Any withdrawals were with her full knowledge and consent." "Is that so?" Grandmother Elaine spoke up, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. "Because I have no recollection of authorizing you to spend my retirement savings on first-class tickets and private cabanas." "Mom," my father turned to her imploringly, "you know how much the twins mean to you. We were creating family memories." "Without including your other daughter," Grandmother pointed out, while telling her you couldn't afford to include her. Amanda was staring at our parents with growing horror. "You told me that money was from your retirement fund. You said you wanted to treat us." "We do. We did," my mother insisted. "We're just reallocating family resources to where they're needed most." "Without permission from the person whose resources you're reallocating," I added. "I trusted you with access to my accounts for emergencies and bill payments." Grandmother said to my father, disappointment evident in her voice. "Not to fund lavish gifts and vacations while excluding Luann from family events." My father's face had gone pale. "We were going to pay it all back. It was just temporary." $200,000 over 5 years doesn't sound temporary," I noted. "Nor does the mortgage refinancing on grandmother's house with what appears to be a forged signature." "Forged signature," Amanda repeated, looking increasingly distressed. "Mom, Dad, what is going on?" My mother burst into tears. "We were just trying to keep the family happy. Amanda needed help with the twins and their activities. They have such expensive tastes and needs." "While telling me you couldn't help with my student loans or emergency dental surgery," I added quietly. "Or include me in a family vacation." The family dynamic was shifting before my eyes. Amanda looked genuinely shocked. My parents appeared cornered, and my brother Nate, who had arrived late and been sitting silently, finally spoke up. "I knew about some of this," he admitted. "I overheard them talking last year about using grandmother's money. They told me it was fine that she had approved it." "I never approved any of this," Grandmother stated firmly, "and I've taken steps to ensure it stops immediately. As of yesterday, William and Diana no longer have access to any of my accounts. I filed a formal fraud report with my bank and financial institutions." "Fraud," my father choked out. "Mother, you can't be serious. We're family." "Yes, we are," she replied steadily. "Which makes this betrayal all the more serious. You didn't just steal from me, William. You used my money to create painful inequity between your children. You excluded Luann from family events while using my funds to create luxury experiences for Amanda and her family." The twins had retreated to a corner of the room, sensing the adult tension. Paul, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "I had no idea the money was coming from Elaine," he said stiffly. "I was told it was your savings that you wanted to share with your grandchildren." I looked around the table at my family, feeling surprisingly calm. "I've prepared several options for how to proceed," I explained, opening a folder. "Teresa, my law school friend, has outlined a repayment plan that would avoid criminal charges for elder financial abuse and fraud. It would require selling assets, potentially including your house, and establishing a repayment schedule monitored by a court-appointed financial guardian." My parents looked stunned, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. "This isn't just about the Hawaii trip," I continued, my voice steady, despite the emotions churning inside me. "This is about a lifetime of treating me as less deserving than Amanda, of dismissing my needs while catering to hers, of lying to my face while spending money that wasn't even yours on lavish experiences that deliberately excluded me." Amanda was crying now too. "I didn't know, Luann. I swear I didn't know the money was coming from grandmother or that they were telling you they couldn't afford to help you." I believed her. Amanda had been raised to expect preferential treatment, but she wasn't directly responsible for our parents' financial deception. Moving forward, grandmother announced firmly, things will be different. I've updated my will and financial arrangements to ensure equal treatment of all my grandchildren. William and Diana, you have a choice. You can agree to the repayment plan Luann has prepared, or we can proceed with formal charges. You would press charges against your own son? My father asked incredulously. You stole from your own mother, she countered, and used that money to hurt your daughter repeatedly. What would you have me do? In the end, my parents agreed to the repayment plan. They would sell their house and move to a smaller condo using the equity to begin repaying grandmother's accounts. A neutral third-party financial advisor would oversee their finances for 5 years, and they would attend mandatory financial counseling. As for Amanda, the revelation of our parents' deception created the first genuine crack in her perfect family image. She left that night in tears, Paul stony-faced beside her, as they loaded the unusually subdued twins into their luxury SUV. My brother Nate approached me as I was preparing to leave. I should have told you what I knew, he said quietly. I was afraid of losing my free housing. I'm sorry, Luann. I nodded, not quite ready to forgive, but understanding his predicament. We'll talk more later. Grandmother hugged me tightly at the door. You did the right thing, she whispered. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For all of us. The drive back to my apartment in Chicago that night was surreal. I felt hollow, yet somehow lighter. The family I had known was irrevocably changed. The carefully maintained illusion of normalcy shattered beyond repair. But in its place, perhaps something more honest could eventually grow. 6 months have passed since that confrontation. The family dynamic has shifted dramatically. My parents sold their house and moved into a modest 2-bedroom condo. They seem subdued at family gatherings, the financial oversight and mandatory counseling, having taken a toll on their previous confidence. Amanda has made tentative efforts to rebuild our relationship, reaching out for coffee, and acknowledging the favoritism she benefited from throughout our lives. It's a slow process, but I can see her making genuine attempts to understand my perspective. My own life has continued to evolve. The marketing firm promoted me to senior director after our rebranding campaign won a major industry award. I've established clear boundaries with my family, limiting visits and maintaining my emotional distance while the wounds heal. My relationship with grandmother Elaine has grown even stronger. We speak daily, and I've taken her on several weekend trips to Michigan and Wisconsin, creating the kind of memories she should have had with all her family all along. Nate has moved out of our parents' home and into an apartment with roommates, finally taking steps toward independence. We've begun rebuilding our sibling relationship as well, bonding over our shared experiences growing up in Amanda's shadow. The most recent family gathering, a modest dinner at grandmother's house, showed the first signs of a new, more balanced dynamic. The twins' achievements were celebrated appropriately, but my recent award at work received equal attention. My parents asked questions about my life and projects, making visible efforts to engage equally with both daughters. It will take years to heal the damage of decades of favoritism and deception. Some days I still feel the sting of those childhood wounds and the fresh pain of the Hawaii vacation exclusion. But I no longer question my worth or accept being treated as less deserving than my sister. Standing up for myself changed my family forever, but it also changed me. I realized that allowing others to determine my value was a choice I no longer needed to make. Sometimes the hardest truths are the most necessary ones to expose, even when they hurt the people closest to you. This Christmas, I'm taking grandmother Elaine Nate and my friends Jasmine and Teresa on a cruise to the Bahamas. We'll create new memories with people who value each other equally. That's the family I'm choosing to build now, one based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or unequal treatment. Have you ever had to stand up to family favoritism or unfair treatment? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you're currently struggling with similar family dynamics, remember that you deserve equal love and respect. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories and hit the like button if this resonated with you. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to accept the unacceptable.